What's up, 7th graders? Welcome to another video lesson with Mr. Chamberlain. This is for the week of May 4th, 2020. This is video lesson number 1. So we just finished Africa south of the Sahara. That's where we left off in March when we left in-class learning. And we spent the first 2 weeks of online learning kind of just finishing that unit up. Now we're ready to move on to our next unit, which is called South Asia. South Asia is based around the country of India and its neighbors. So you have India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Those three countries were once all part of India, and it was ruled by the British. And then they got their independence and broke apart into 3 different countries. To the north of India, you have 2 mountain kingdoms. You have Nepal, which is where Mount Everest is located, and you have Bhutan. And then south of India in the oceans, you have 2 island nations. You have Sri Lanka, which is nicknamed the teardrop of India because it looks like a teardrop coming off of India. And then out in the Indian Ocean, you have the Maldives, which are beautiful tropic islands where they have a lot of fancy vacation places for you to go. So today we're going to focus on the physical geography of the region. So number one thing that stands out to me are the Himalaya mountains. These are the mountain range that's just north of India. These are the tallest mountains in the world, and they house some of the tallest mountains, which the tallest is Mount Everest at just over 29,000 feet. The second tallest mountain in the world is there. It's called K2. Now, how did these mountains form? Well, India actually used to be part of Africa, and then it broke apart through plate tectonics, and it drifted through the Indian Ocean, and it crashed in to the rest of Asia. And as it crashed in, it pushed that crust up, forming the Himalaya mountains. And what's kind of cool is that it's continuing to push in that same direction even today, and it's making those mountains continue to grow. So the first people ever to climb Mount Everest successfully to the top were Sir Edmund Hillary and a local guy by the name of Tenzing Norgay. And if you were to climb it today, you would climb actually 6 feet taller than they did when they did it way back in the 1900s. So that's kind of cool. So they have really tall mountains in the north. There are desert areas out in the northwest. So just like we would picture deserts, we have lack of water, poor farming conditions, harsh climates, and so on. There are some important rivers in the area. So I guess the most significant one we'll talk a lot about is called the Ganges River. It's important not only for trade and for travel and for water resources, but it has a significance culturally to the people of India, especially those that practice the religion of Hinduism. It's a very sacred body of water. We're going to focus on that aspect of the Ganges River next week. A couple other important rivers, the Indus River, which had an ancient civilization around it. That's in the country of Pakistan. And then you have the Brahmaputra, which eventually flows into the Ganges and empties out in the country of Bangladesh, which is a very low elevation country that has a lot of flooding throughout the year. And then you have a couple island countries. So I mentioned Sri Lanka. They have wonderful fertile soil. They grow a lot of things like tea there. And then you have the tropical, beautiful islands of the Maldives, which are very low-lying, flat islands that could be at risk if global warming were to cause ice caps to melt and cause the ocean levels to rise, because they're only a few feet above sea level. Let's talk about the country of India for a second. So I mentioned that's where the Ganges River is. It flows across the country, and that is the highly populated area of India. If you're looking at like a population density map, that would be that dark purple with the most people living per square mile. You also have these really cool things that go down the triangle part of India called Ghats. You have the eastern and western Ghats. A Ghat is defined as a steep hill that leads down to an area of low elevation, such as a river valley. And then in the kind of the middle of India is the Deccan Plateau. So those are some special land features in the country of India. Let's talk about the rivers for a second. So India, our second lesson this week is going to talk about the high population in India and the high population density. And with that comes a lot of pollution. Unfortunately, some of the rivers aren't treated well by the people who live there. They actually throw a lot of garbage into the rivers, and water pollution is a huge issue, as you can see from the picture I'm showing you now. So that's something that we'll kind of talk about. Some people have the attitude that it's a river, it's self-cleansing. Like if I throw some garbage in the river, it's just going to flow away. But of course, that garbage heads off to somewhere. So we're going to talk more about that Ganges River, like I said, next week, especially the cultural significance with it. So I want to talk to you for a few minutes about the tallest mountain in the world at over 29,000 feet, Mount Everest. So because it is the tallest mountain on land, it draws in people who want to try and conquer it by climbing to the top or the peak. And that is very dangerous because people are not meant to be living 5.5 miles above sea level. The oxygen is very thin, the conditions are very harsh, the wind is strong, the temperatures are cold, there's ice crevices. Now there are two ways to conquer Mount Everest. Most people go through the Nepal side. There's also a side in a region called Tibet, which is part of China from the north. Most people go through the Nepal side. There are local guides there that will help you. They're called the Sherpas, and they're kind of experts. They set the mountain up for climbing, and they will be your guide to the top. Now, climbing Mount Everest has become very popular. However, it's very expensive. The cheap end to climb it would be about $30,000. The average it costs people to climb it is about $65,000, and the VIP packages can run you well over $100,000. So when you go there, you have to get acclimated to the climate and to some high elevation. You go to base camp and you kind of make your way up the mountain there. Now, when you climb the mountain, you have to watch out for a lot of obstacles because there are a lot of people who die while trying to climb it. Avalanches claim a lot of lives, hypothermia, falling down ice crevices, all different types of dangers. The Yeti could attack you as well. So as you're climbing up the mountain, also when you get to really high elevations, you have to be careful because if you climb up too quickly, you don't adjust to the thin air because there's not a lot of oxygen up there, and you can black out. Now, for people who die on the mountain, unfortunately, their bodies most of the time just get left up there. There's no way to get them back down. And so there are hundreds of bodies up there, people who have not been successful at trying to reach the top. The last part, to kind of classify the mountain into different territories, the very last part is called the death zone because you are at that very high elevation. The winds are strong, the temperatures are cold, your body isn't thinking right, you don't have enough oxygen, even with oxygen masks, and it is a very big challenge. And with the mountain being so crowded the last few years, oftentimes when you get close to reaching that peak, you have to wait in line for your turn to get to the top. And when you finally reach that top, it's not like a big celebration. You got like a couple minutes up there at the very, very most. You're not like having a picnic and enjoying the view because first of all, the wind is brutal, the temperatures are cold, and then you might have people waiting to get up there. It's also common for people not to ever make it to the top. They might get up there close, but the conditions are just too dangerous to reach the top. And so they have to turn back around and they don't get a chance to make it to the top, which would be a real bummer if you're spending $65,000 and trying to do that. You have an Edpuzzle that you're going to be watching about Mount Everest. It's about 6 or 7 minutes long. Really gets into the dangers of climbing Mount Everest and all the things that go into it. I really like it because it's nice, clear video. It's going to show you some of the ice falls you have to climb up and the peak and how crowded it's been. So the climbing season actually coming up. It's in May. Probably, I'm going to guess maybe it might not be happening this year because of COVID-19, but typically in May is the time of the year where the conditions are the most right to be successful in climbing the mountain. And so that's the only time of year they do it. And this brings in millions of dollars into the Nepal economy, which is the country where most people go to climb Mount Everest. So it's going to be a huge effect on their economy this year if they don't have climbers coming to challenge themselves. So most of the Edpuzzle is going to be multiple choice questions. The very last one, though, I do want your opinion on whether or not you think it's worth the risk to climb Mount Everest, knowing that not everyone makes it up there successfully. And some years are more deadly than others. So you'll have to decide if you're kind of a risk-taker person, someone who might jump out of an airplane. Would you be willing to go over there and challenge yourself to climb to the top? Or are you more of a kind of a safe person and don't think it's worth the risk of possibly dying just to climb the world's tallest mountain? So I want to remind you guys, office hours, 2 o'clock on Mondays, 10 o'clock on Fridays. They've been going really well the last couple of times. I want to thank those of you who have been joining us. If you haven't, we'd love to have you start joining us starting this week. And good luck. Make sure you reach out if you have any questions about the assignments. Thanks.